I'm Dr. Gregory Sells, Executive Director of the LCRL. Welcome to our sharing of our Two Kingdom Mom and Pop papers, Bold Biblical Principles for a Robust Public Christian Life. Today, Vocational Respect, Seeking Justice. Defund the police, abolish ICE, censure the police, accept no limitations. Such are the cries of a particular segment of American politics today. The other side says support the police, be law-abiding citizens, emphasizing the honoring of law enforcement and the civilizing force of law and order over chaos and violence. How should a two-kingdom engagement of these issues proceed? Who's right? Who's wrong? Is it all just your perspective versus mine, your experience versus mine? Here the Bible can give us some direction as to how to engage these kinds of divisive issues. In Romans 13 verses 1 and 2, St. Paul instructs God's people saying this, "Let everyone be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established. The authorities that exist have been established by God. Consequently, whoever rebels against the authority is rebelling against what God has instituted, and those who do so will bring judgment on themselves." There is a priority, then, to one's engagement with the authorities. Much like the fourth commandment calls us to honor our fathers and mothers, the Bible prioritizes a be subject first attitude that honors what God has set in place for our good, calling for our obedience to those with authority over us in society as preserving gifts from Him. The word rebel in the text doesn't just simply imply mere disagreement or protest either, but a total disregard for those in authority. That kind of view ultimately exposes our rebelliousness against God as well as God's authority over us in our lives as well. But does be subject first attitude mean that we as citizens blindly follow whomever's in charge? Hardly. The apostles themselves guide us here too. In Acts 5:29, Peter says we must obey God rather than men. Here, such civil obedience is still obedience because it was not merely rooted in a passionate objection or an offended will. It was rooted in the prioritizing of God's clearly defined will over and against the fickle will of those in authority that day. That spirit should also temper our freedom and our exercise of our own will, both towards God and towards one another. When engaging the authorities, then, especially those that are legitimate, legally established, and consented to, there should be a vocational respect for their position and for the laws that hold us all in common. And if there yet be any challenges to such legitimate authority due to injustice, they should be engaged lawfully and orderly, for God is a God of order and peace. 1 Corinthians 14, verse 33. Now, in the American context, there's a unique wrinkle to this discussion as well. The constitutional limitation of coercive authority describes the citizen, that's the one who's in subjection, you and me, the citizen's authority to delineate the degree of that subjectivity. In fact, the citizen, with the God-given inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, we have the constitutional obligation to work toward legally defining the boundaries of those in authority, explicitly for the enduring of that freedom for us and for all. As Christians, we're reminded here as well that even in freedom, we should obey God, not men, even when those men or women are we ourselves. An LCRL rule of thumb for public engagement, then, especially when it's controversial, is that our attitude should be one of vocational respect that seeks justice. This means seeking to honor those in authority as a rule, and when necessary, also correcting their leadership if we must, but in a spirit of order and peace. Why? Because true justice and lasting peace are beyond our efforts to perfectly create and maintain. Therefore, it's best to be willing to let God do His preserving work through those in authority, while also putting our full faith in God's saving work in Christ for all. Vocational respect seeks justice as an antidote to tyranny, anarchy, and chaos, but it is no substitute for the ultimate justice, mercy, and peace that comes from the person and work of Jesus alone. The former is intended to provide opportunities to proclaim and to live within the latter. That's something to always keep in mind, especially when issues become heated and passionate. I'm Gregory Seltz. Remember to continue to put your temporal liberties to work for the sake of the eternal liberties of Christ. Words to live by, actions to bless. Have a great day.